Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Silvia Scardapane, cultural operator for INWORD, National Observatory on Urban Creativity in Italy. And I'm glad to welcome you to the first meeting of the program called Interchanges on Urban Creativity, series of meetings dedicated to interdisciplinary research on graffiti writing, street art, and new muralism. As you can see from the graphics, the title is both in Italian and Spanish, because the initiative has been organized by INWORD and by INDAGUE, another cultural association from Madrid, Spain, represented today by Isabel Carrasco. The idea of online convention started from an exchange between these two realities that work on the research on urban creativity. And the intention that stimulated us to organize this program was proposing to the general public and to experts new declination of graffiti writing, street art, and new muralism not yet explored. And for this reason, the expert with different background and coming from the most prestigious university in Italy and world will discuss the actual scientific and interdisciplinary research on the phenomenon. We have 3 meetings totally, and first 2 meetings will cover the Italian and Spanish point of view, thanks to the involvement of expert from Italy and Spain. And the last one will see the participation of international researcher. That could make a confrontation on show. For this reason, I would also like to thank the international researcher who will be with us today. Thank you to Oscar Molina Palestina from National Autonomous University of Mexico. Thanks to Pedro Suarez Neves from University of Lisbon. Thanks to Jonna Tolonen from University of Lapland, Finland. And thanks to Anna Garisio from New University of Lisbon. Before we start with the presentation of today's expert, we think that it's important to say a few words on INWORD and INDAGUE. So I pass to my colleague Monica Mongelli.
Thank you, Silvia, and thank you everyone to joining the meeting. INWORD, National Observatory on Urban Creativity, is an operational unit of the Arteteca Cultural Association based in Naples that carries out research and development activities in the field of urban creativity, graffiti writing, street art, and new muralism in Italy and abroad, and operates with its own valorization model in the public, private, non-profit, and international sectors. Since we believe that research is the basis of the real knowledge of the phenomenon, we have created the first study center called Inopinatum. Since 2019, Inopinatum has been based at Suor of Benincasa University of Naples, and its scientific coordination is led by Luca Borriello, INWORD researcher and director. There are currently 3 different departments of Suor Benincasa that are in charge and are connected strongly to the Inopinatum Cultural Center, that are Department of Educational, Psychological, and Communication Sciences, the Department of Legal Sciences, and Department of Humanistic Sciences. I will now pass to Isabel Carrasco to the presentation of her organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. So very briefly, INDAGUE, which is the other association that is organizing this meeting, is the Spanish Association of diffusers and researchers of street art and graffiti. And yet we were funded in 2016 in Spain. We actually have members in Finland. Jonna Tolonen is here. In Portugal, Pedro Suarez is also here. In Ecuador, in France, and in United States. And Yeah, we organize different projects internationally, locally, publications, etc. And we are very happy to be here. Unfortunately, Jordi Pallares, who is the president of INDAGUE right now, couldn't make it for the meeting today. He will join us in the next Wednesday. I think that's it. I think we can start with the presentations if you agree.
Okay, thank you, Isabel. And so we'll now proceed with the presentation of the first expert. So Andrea Maglio, doctor and architect associate professor in history of architecture, director of Interdepartmental Research Center for Architecture and Environmental Heritage and Urban Planning. Since 2013, secretary of the Course of Studies in Building Engineers, Architecture of the University of Naples, Federico II. Since 2013, he is also member of the board of the Architecture Department of University of Naples, Federico II, and since the same year, professor of the Doctoral College, Architecture Department of the Federico II University of Naples. And today, he will present the role of architecture in public art. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a very good presentation. I didn't know I had so many titles, but it's okay. I think I will share the screen just to show some slides. And can you see it?
It's downloading. Okay, now we see it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think that now you can see much better.
Yes, perfect.
I am an architectural historian, and so I was asked to make some observation about the relationship between architecture and public art. That's something we are researching about with INward together. We had some common projects about these topics, and in my research field, of course, beyond the architectural topics, also this one that concerning public space and so art in public space and public art is also quite relevant. I don't know how to put this away. Maybe here. So I will start with a question about this connection between architecture, urban space, and art, because sometimes some artworks are very relevant for urban space and they begin to appear as a symbols of the city sometimes. This is, for example, the case of Rio de Janeiro, but of course, this is just an example. We could name plenty of cases. Or Chicago is another one. The Cloud Gate of Anish Kapoor has become a kind of symbol of the city, and everyone wants to take a picture there with the reflection in the mirroring surface. But the question is not so simple, because sometimes the relationship between art and architecture in the city, it's much more complicated, and sometimes it's difficult to understand if a work is a work of art or a work of architecture. And this is, for example, the case of Mexico City. There's a Mexican here with us. So I didn't know, but I'm glad, because he for sure knows this work from the architect Luis Barragan, who was working with the artist Matthias Göritz. And together they planned this satellite towers. This is an art installation inside an highway. As we can see, a very big highway with the typical landscape of contemporary highway. We could call it highwayscape in some way, but this was not architecture. This was an artwork with in order to make the view a little bit better for the drivers and for the people, and not leave it as a common highway landscape. So these are towers. There's not an inner space. They are full and not a space accessible. Even if it seems they are accessible like skyscrapers or something like that, but they are not. So sometimes it's confusing because it's on purpose confusing, because this is an artwork that seems to be an architectural work. And this was exactly the purpose of the architect. And so the color and the shapes of the different towers just have to give a pleasant view to the drivers. Sometimes, of course, this is not a symbol of the city of Mexico City. It's not enough to be symbol of the city, but sometimes the urban role of some artworks, is really relevant, and even sometimes it's not the intention of the artist, of the workers, but then these works become so important and so symbolic for the community. Chiara Devi, who is not any architectural historian, but just a researcher for history and sociology, anthropology, and she was once she has points out 3 different possible connections between art and urban space. Autonomy, when the artwork is ignoring the urban space, or approval, when there's harmony between artwork and urban space, or disapproval when there's a contrast, when the artwork is on purpose in contrast with the urban space where it is living, where it is staying. For us architects, normally, it is always the best solution is harmony, is approval, when an artwork is in harmony with the space, with the urban space, with the square, with the street, and so on. But this is not necessarily true, because sometimes very good artworks in a very peculiar condition, they are in contrast with the urban space, and this sometimes has a very dramatic effect, and this is good for the observer, which is much more driven to be curious about the artwork, because there's a contrast with the environment. And sometimes it can happen a very different case, like, for example, in Milano, Piazzale Cadorna, where the artwork from Oldenburg and Van Poken, Argo, Filo, and Nodo, this is very famous, but this was conceived together or a little before than the architecture from the building we see on the background. And it was maybe the building who was according to the artwork. So this can also happen, and it's interesting to see how this connection can be in both sides influential. I mean, another kind of artwork, of public art, which has a very strong impact on the urban space, is the mural art. And sometimes this kind of mural art is able to change the destiny of some cities, to improve the life in the cities, because it's a touristic attraction. and because people come to take picture of the mural, and so the population itself, the community itself, can really change the perception of the space where they live. This is happened some years ago, for example, in Valparaiso in Chile, in the neighborhood of Cerro Alegre, which is a UNESCO World Heritage now. It happened in many places. I cannot name all of them, but some very famous and very clear. For example, in Medellin, in Colombia, La Comuna 13 is a neighborhood where this was the neighborhood where the narco traffics was delivered and where Pablo Escobar was living. So it had a very bad fame. And yes, now after an intervention of the public administration, some murals have been put on kind of path that you can walk on, and so tourists are coming to see the neighborhood and to see the mural art, and everything has changed. So this is another case of we can say regeneration, city regeneration, urban regeneration through public art, in this case, mural art. So it's very interesting how the power of artworks is so strong to change some destinies of the city. Other cases where the mural art, in my opinion, is very good used is, for example, in Lyon in France, where all the city is full of some artworks, mural works like this one below. Is a kind of trompe-l'œil, so to say, but it's much more interesting for me as an architect. For example, in the neighborhood at Attigny, that's the neighborhood designed by the architect Tony Garnier. In the blind parts of the buildings, they have put some murals with the projects of Garnier, and there's a Garnier museum in one of the buildings here. So there's a harmony. In this case, there's a harmony, there's a close connection between architecture, artworks, under the name of the designer of the neighborhood, which is Tony Garnier. So in this case, I think that nobody can think that the artworks is covering architecture or having a bad impact on architecture. This happens sometimes in other cases. I will speak now in less minute that I have about some bad cases or bad practices, we could say. Naples is a place where the mural art is in last years so frequent and has been increased so much, even both from a spontaneous side, because artists wanted to have their mural somewhere, or because the public administration commissioned some works. This is the case of Jorit. INWORD knows very well this case because they were and Luca Borelli were involved in this operation. This is a peripheral neighborhood where the mural arts have the same meaning we have seen in Bogota, in Medellin, or in Valparaiso, because they are in some way qualifying a peripheral neighborhood with not good conditions for people living there. On the other side, we have very central neighborhoods like this one, the Sanità neighborhoods. It's very central. It's a neighborhood historically with buildings from Renaissance time up to today. And over there, some churches from 17th and 18th century have been painted like this, and this is maybe a case of a kind of contrast between architecture and mural art, and people are attracted by this painting, but not by architecture. Nobody wants to come into the church or understand the architecture, but the painting is much more relevant than the context. And in this case, we are again in the field of symbols, because this is the very, very famous Maradona mural in Naples. It is in another historical neighborhood called the Spanish neighborhood, Quartieri Spagnoli. And this was painted when the football team won the first cup in the 80s. So during the years, it was forgotten in some way, and a window was open here in correspondence of the face of Maradona. But then after the new cup won by the football team, everybody wanted to come here and see and take picture of this. And so a strange phenomenon happened, because now this place is a kind of sanctuary of Maradona, and there are people selling everything, scarves and hats and everything about Maradona. And there's people every day, in every hour of the day and night, coming here just for the symbol of Maradona. And the architectural context here is not very precious, as you see. And so there is not a conflict between architecture and art in this case, but we are, I say it again, in the field of the symbol again. And a very strange case, I'm going to be finished, just to see how differentiated can be this connection between the two fields of architecture and art and public art. In this case, we are in an inner space, so we are not in a public space. And this is a church in the Capodimonte park. The Royal Palace of Capodimonte is a big park for one who are not from Naples and don't know the city. And this church is a church from the 18th century, designed by Ferdinando Sanfelice, one of the best architects of Neapolitan late Baroque period. So this was a church before on the left, and this on the right is the church as it is now, after redesigned by the Spanish architect Santiago Calatrava. I want to say that even if this is an inner space, but the perception of this monument is really changed, and it's impossible to have an idea of the white color permit to the observer to understand the space and to understand the qualities of the space, of the surface, of the external walls. And with the blue color of Santiago Calatrava, it's impossible. Everything is more flat, and especially the ceiling with those golden stars on a blue background is totally different from the white one, who was conceived by Sanfelice. So this is a case where I think there's a kind of passion for the great name of an architect. Santiago Calatrava is an engineer, actually, not an architect. He was graduated an engineer and in the Academy of Fine Arts. So he's an artist, sculptor especially, and engineer. So I cannot speak so much about this. I don't have time, but I understand his point of view, but I think that this shouldn't have been permitted by monument care and so on. And the last slide is just to remain to Naples. Some other examples in the city, Nespignon or Chopecaf, of public art and mural. They have been really good accepted by the population, by the community. And sometimes there are people taking off the surface of the murals when they want to have them, they want to keep them. So it's interesting. So just to conclude my very short observation spots about this topic. That's very rich, and we could speak so much about it. I think that this the architecture has not to be considered just as a surface you can write it on. Sometimes this has happened in Naples and in other cities. So you have a flat surface or not flat too. And so this is just a place to paint it on, or to have artworks, or sometimes light works, and so on. But there's a very big difference between historical contexts and peripheral ones. And this difference has to be underlined. And sometimes I see that's not, the public administration, especially Naples, don't have this awareness. And sometimes, even in historical context, it's possible to have mural arts, of course, but it should have been previously investigated, which is the surface you are working on. And so if you are really changing some relations, some characteristics of architecture, urban space, and the city itself. And if you are really changing it, maybe we have to ask something. Okay, I think I am not so late, and I'm finished now.
It was
Thanks to-
perfect. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you to Professor Maglio, who with this excursus took us to various Italian cities, country, including Naples, home of INWORLD. In this way, urban creativity becomes a denotatum of an architectural sign. Therefore, this makes us read this phenomenon not only as a form, but also as a series of relational facts that concern the community. In recent times, however, many experts have gone beyond the concept of the reconquering spaces, and with this, we also want to attract the attention of international researchers present here for the next meetings. So, thank you, Andrea.
Thank you.
So I'm going to ask you to the public if there's some question. There are some questions from the audience.
Don't be shy.
Okay, I have a question. I don't know if you have I think you decided to focus on public art. I don't know if you have had the opportunity of develop an opinion about other type of interventions in public space, like street art or graffiti. I know this is a whole new question, but I don't know if you had the opportunity of elaborating an idea about that. About the relationship, between architecture, public space, from your point of view.
Yeah, but graffiti should be traditionally something spontaneous, not commissioned by the local administration.
Okay, so that would be the main difference. And what do you think about, I think some architects are designing today bearing in mind the possibility that some walls might be eventually ridden, vandalized, I mean, you name it. And they're bearing that in mind when designing, especially the exterior walls. So what do you think about it?
I have thought about this, and I suggested this to some colleagues of mine. I am not a designer, I'm an historian, so I just suggested it to my colleagues who are designing and making some projects in architecture. I think this could be a very innovative and but very brilliant idea. Actually, I don't know contemporary buildings who have this kind of surfaces. In history, there are some buildings where some surfaces were supposed to be used for a kind of propaganda, especially in the fascist time. The very famous Casa de Fascia in Como, for example, had a part of the main facade was empty, was like a screen to have writings or propaganda pictures and to put it on. So the idea was to have a propaganda, political propaganda, especially. But now we are speaking about something quite different, to have a space for writers, for graffiti workers. So this could be, I think, especially in some neighborhoods where you know that these artists are working, so we know where they are and where they are moving, so you could do it. Or maybe sometimes in the metro stations, or in where it's common to have some metro station or cars painted by painters or graffiti or so on. And you could think about that previously and so consider. I don't know if then the artist who finds a surface to work on, decided by someone else, is happy to have it or not to go and work where he wants freely and without any limit, you know. So maybe the artist is not free and not happy of that. But I don't know about buildings. If there are, I will happy to include in my research, but actually I don't know. In Italy, it seems to me that they are not.
Yeah, I don't know either. I just heard, that possibility. And I don't know if that could be even considered like a sort of domestication of graffiti in a way, but I wanted to hear your opinion. Thank you very much. There is another question in the chat. I don't know if you want to read it, by Yvonne.
Yes, I'm gonna read it from the chat. Okay. Let's see. Okay, in many cases, the harmonious relationship between architecture and public art is achieved when public art adapts to the place or meets the favor of the host community. But in your opinion, isn't there the risk of censoring the artist's desire, of worse, limit the provocative nature of public art? I think that maybe it could be a point of a reference as also for other international experts today.
I can answer from my point of view. If there's a harmony between art and architecture, not necessarily this is for the artist is a limitation of his freedom, not necessarily. And sometimes it happened that a provocative artwork has been taken by the community in a very positive way, and it became a symbol. I am thinking about one artwork in particular, specifically the finger in Milan, in the square of Milan, where in front of the Borsa, by Catalan, and that is provocative. You know that the finger is a bad move, I don't have to say to you. But this was, now everybody was thinking it was funny. It was maybe because the community has interpreted this finger as it was, this bad move was made to the stock exchange and to the finance and not to the community itself. So maybe there is a kind of revenge from the community in front of the financial power. But this provocative move was quite good, taken by the community and the population. So sometimes it's difficult to say when a provocative artwork can be shared or not by the community. You cannot say it previously. It's sometimes really, really unpredictable, no?
Thank you. There are also another comment or by Anna Cariso. Anna, would you like to say it to you, or do you prefer I'm gonna read it?
If you can read it.
You can read it, you can read it.
Okay, so there are legal walls where graffiti is allowed without previous commissioning in many cities, but they are mostly theatrical places and not buildings with another function, housing, commercial services, etc. Usually, they are just walls around vacant lots, dividing parks around train lines, etc. In Portuguese, we will defer muros and paredes, sorry.
Yes. Which is the question? If
I think it was just a comment.
Sorry, it's not a question. I was just commenting because you were talking previously with Isabel about the legal walls, the walls where people could spontaneously do graffiti or street art on. It was just to add to that conversation, but I was late. Sorry.
No, thank you. I think this difference is useful because sometimes the wall, for us architects, the wall can be, you can have very different types of wall, because a wall is a wall sustaining something, a wall is a wall dividing spaces, or just a border. So in architecture, we have very different kinds of walls. So what you say, it's really useful. I think I agree with you, and sometimes to paint a wall which is part of a building of a context is quite different. Sometimes some walls are symbolic. I don't want to speak about the Berlin Wall, of course, but this is a case where the mural on the Berlin Wall have been in some way become also symbols, you know. But in every city you have some walls. They are just borders of some parts of the city, or train line, or neighborhoods, or enterprises. So to paint there has a different meaning, and sometimes there is a specific aim in painting that part of the city. So I agree with you.
Okay, thank you so much also for this stimulating exchange. So if you agree, I will pass to the next presenter. So thank you again, Andrea Maglio. And so I will pass to Damiano Razzoli from University of Modena and Reggio Emilia. Are you there?
I'm here. Hello,
Okay.
everybody.
Hi. Good evening.
Hello.
So, Damiano Razzoli is a researcher in sociology of cultural processes at the Department of Communication and Economics of the University of Modena and Reggio Emilia, where he collaborates with the Opera Research Unit, specialized in the study of urban creativity. He is an adjunct professor for the USA University Studies Consortium program and today he will present From the Wall to the Screen and Back, Hybridization and Digitalization in the Realm of Street Art. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to reconsider my reflection and thinking on street art and creativity applied to city. I've been focusing on recently on how creativity and has an impact on the capacity of a city and its places to change their representation and the meaning of its places. Well, I'm going to present a work that is based on the capacity of street art to regenerate the meaning of an abandoned industrial place that has been very important for the city of Reggio Emilia. I'll try to do it by starting from a focus on how street art is embedded, involved in walls, screens, and social media somehow, trying to root the analysis of my example in this general framework. Well, I think that without social media, street art was not possible, and without street art and without social media, street art is not even possible to be focused, framed in the way we are trying to do that nowadays. So I'm going to present, so the screen, where is it? Finestra, blah, 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 blah. Condividi. Is it possible to share the yes, there it is. Perfect. So I will start from this tag, Taki 183, trying to focus on how it's possible to move from the wall to the screen and back, and conceptualizing how hybridization and digitalization in the realm of street art are very important to root, from my point of view, any reflection on urban creativity, or of how social media wouldn't exist without street art and back. Well, the very first example of how we can see how street art is embedded with sociality is the starting of tagging in New York. This is the first example, Taki 183, that has been pictured by New York Times in this article. It was the very beginning somehow of tagging. Taki was a Manhattan teenager who writes his name and his street number everywhere he goes. That's actually what is happening nowadays with social media. We write on walls what's up in relation to our life. What we have here, we have a surface, we have the intensity of our life that is just attached to this surface, the intensity of the act, the intensity of the gesture, the intensity of the reason why someone wants to express himself saying, hey, I'm here, my name is this tag and I'm existing. And of course, as an impact in terms of visibility. I hate you, sorry, I took correct, I hurt you. This is very interesting because somehow nowadays, well, a lot of street artists used the intercultural cultural interface, the discourse, the typos of social media to be reproduced on wall. Well, street art is basically a means of communication that has developed with urban development, just as social media that has grown with the digital boom is a means of communication with others. Graffiti, tag, alias, community, visuals, platform. But it is interesting of how the digital vocabulary, tagging, walls, somehow, it has been taken from the very beginning of street art movement in terms of tagging, in terms of graffiti. This is just a very interesting image that somehow exemplify what I said. Just as street art has changed the way we see the city, social media influences the surface, intensity, and visibility of our relationships. In a way that, this is interesting, the huge sprawls, raising the attention of street art has not been only driven by the, of course, interest in terms of urban regeneration, linking with architecture and so on, but has something to do with the capacity of street art to use social media platform as a sort of duplicate of walls, digital walls, which are screens that made them able to reproduce, virtualize, duplicate, and give somehow an incredible visibility and a continuous visibility. Well, on social media, street art is there and is not disappearing like is happening in real on real walls, where you got a graffiti, a tag, a murals, but someone else decided to erase it, delete it, or for any reason destroy the walls. On social media, is the artwork is not ephemeral anymore. It stays. This is interesting. This image is not even available in your country, but at least in your screen, yes. So street artists have developed innovative ways of displaying their messages in public spaces, using architectural features and properties of location, imagination, and repetition to reach a wider audience. And they matched these innovative ways with, well, digital screen. In Foursquare, the place is a target. In Twitter, the phrase as a slogan. Facebook, wall, tagging, cross-posting. Well, this vocabulary is fully taken somehow from the real of street art, and this makes me able to refrain what theoretician of digital culture Lev Manovich said about the role of artistic avant-garde in shaping well, the capacity of human being of developing social media, or in a broader sense, what we call software culture. Well, basically, we are using all the, let's say, features developed by avant-garde. Patchwork, copy and paste, remixing, layer on layers. These are all features that comes from avant-garde. So it's interesting to say that somehow street art, Taki 183, as an avant-garde, as an artistic avant-garde, somehow had an impact on the development of social media in terms of vocabulary that on social media we use every single day. So just as street art uses the physical world as a communication surface, users have the opportunity to use digital tools in the same way. So social remix is about modularity, variability, mobility. Somehow we are all street artists in the realm of social media, because we are basically applying the same features, same languages the street artists do on the city walls. And back, because somehow street artists that work on social remix, they take piece of walls and they somehow translate them in significant pieces of art, making them alive on digital media. So if you take a search on Google and you try to mix to research tag like social media or street art, you got a certain amount of pictures like this one. Street artist pieces, murals that basically are using somehow refraining links towards social media. So such as street art, how street art benefits from social media? Well, in terms of speed, because if I draw a piece in a precise location, I can speed it up by, well, filming all the process of production. I can upload it, okay, in a very fast way, and this production of the upload is way faster than the process of producing the piece in real life. Connectivity, you need to go to a place precisely, physically, to see that place. Connectivity allow me to connect my piece to a global network of users, of viewers. And so this is a sort of augmented visibility. Cargo Jindu is an interesting example. I take by no, it's not available. It's not anymore on there. So I missed to just put a picture here. Sorry. So Cargo Jindu was basically a work by a street artist from Reggio Emilia that started to well, insert quotation from philosopher on containers that were moved across train line and boat. And well, people working on train station, people working on harbor, on boat, working with containers, well, found out, thanks to the tag, the profile on Instagram of the project, a project that could not exist in the way that was just designed without the link between the tagging on containers and the profile on Instagram. And the comments on the profile of Instagram is full of people that saw that container with that quotation on the place where they were working. So social media somehow can be seen as a sort of conservation proposal of street art. There is this huge debate on how it's possible to conserve, foster a piece of street art that is ephemeral. When someone draw a graffiti, a tag, sometimes a mural, well, the artist is not pretending necessarily that this piece is going to survive forever, because, well, it's the essence somehow of street art. So in a way, they assumed as an approach, probably being unaware of the potential impact, the fact that social media can be a sort of opportunity of digital conservation of street art. It is maintaining the authorial choice, it is creating a database and archive, and there is this engagement of this concept, the interface, as a relational wall that enable connectivity and visibility way beyond the original place where the piece was created. Let's consider that the place is still important, because without the real place, the original place, the materiality of that, we could not have somehow the digital twin of this piece. So somehow nowadays, is it possible to propose that there is no street art without digital screen, as there is no digital screen as the capacity of street art to have an impact on this, well, on social media. Let's move from this general reflection to the example, okay, Reggiane Urban Gallery, because what is interesting that somehow having street art on social media, on digital screen, enable to see cities as modules, as how do you say, as modulable, changeable pieces of a landscape that is in continuous transformation. Landscape so become a digital interface. Reggiane Urban Gallery was basically a 360-degree picture database of all the murals placed in 4 buildings of these abandoned industrial plants that now is living a process of profound restoration. So you've got the map, this is all the area, this was one of the most outstanding industrial plants in northern Italy across the 20th century. It was a place where military cargo, military airplane, train, and so on was basically produced. And at the beginning of the 2000, well, it has been abandoned. So now it's in the process of profound restoration, and the municipality wanted to preserve the pieces of street art that was placed in two buildings. Between the 2000 and the 2015-16, before the process of restoration started, basically this place had been reconquered by street artists. You can visit the place by clicking on the building, and then with using a digital interface, you can just visit all the area. And for each graffiti or murals, you have a tag with the name of the authors, with a sort of and a page dedicated to the artist. Basically, the goal, the object of this process was not necessarily to conserve pieces of street art, because they basically had been destroyed, but was to drive somehow a symbolic process of cultural restoration. So if we take some theoretical notes, we can see the city as a complex semiotic mechanism where everything has an impact in terms of generation of culture. And the city carries out its function only because it presents itself as a container of text, codes that are heterogeneous, mixed, hybrid. So Lotman, this Russian theoretician, said that the city is affected by semiotic polyglottism. So there are a bajillion of different sources that are enable cities themselves and people living it in terms of organization, in terms of, well, agents of transformation to create different meanings. So by bridging together different national, social, and stylistic codes and texts, the city creates various hybrids, recording semiotic translation, which transform it into a powerful generator of new information. In lab, the city for street artists are like the web for us, surfer, prosumer, people that engage themselves with the production of cultural elements every single day. Like the city is a source of eternal inspiration. So somehow we can use also another concept, the concept of dispositive. What is a dispositive in terms of Agamben? Anything that has in some way the ability to capture, orient, determine, intercept, model, control, and ensure the gesture, conduct, opinion, and speeches of living beings. Street art, in this sense, has the capacity to be a dispositive, that it is matched with the digital dispositive, while the power of street art is hugely augmented. So in this way, the concept of dispositives is also related to what Deleuze called dispositive device, in terms of a feature to be an assemblage of something that produce a scheme, a diagram, an abstract machine that connects the archive also to cartography. And street artists somehow create new pathways in terms not necessarily of crossing the city physically, but in terms of understanding, of producing new pathways of meanings of places. So maps are no longer simple representation of urban places, but ways of expressing social space and the experience of citizens. And street artist works is strongly related on mapping, not because they are creating maps, but because they are creating meaningful pinpoints that enable us to cross cities in new ways. So, regeneration of the former industry Reggiane with demolition of the walls. So there was the issue of conservation of street art works. And so we create a virtual museum with these characteristics. So this was the industrial plants. This was an example of one of the murals. The very first murals that has been created on Industria Reggiane that creates a huge movement of street artists in this place was created by Blue. So the street artists from Bologna that in the first place started to intervene on the walls of Reggiane. So there is at the base of this process the connection between digital layers, a kinesic one that enable you to move across the map like Google Street basically, but also a static one related to a blog on WordPress that allows us to read detailed content of each places. So at stake here we have the concept of cultural interface. What is cultural interface? A sort of interface that mediates our capacity to organize and structure culture. And this is based on screen. Screen is the very realm of street art. The screen being digital, the screen of our smartphone, or the screen being a square like a wall where the street artist is basically working. So from the guide map to the traversable interface that triggers a virtual mediated experience. And in this sense, this is very interesting. Anytime that a street artist put its pieces on social media, tagging in, placing it with a tag in terms of meaning, a tag in terms of location, it creates immediately a sort of capacity in the users to trace, cross in terms of meaning what the user himself or herself is seeing. So if you take this very interesting quotation from the work of Irvine, we can say that street art provides an intuitive break from the accelerated aesthetics of disappearance, in Paul Virilio terms, a signal hack in a mass-mediated environment where what we see in the regime of screen visibility is always the absence of material object. So the placement of work is often a call to place, marking location with awareness, over against the proliferating urban non-places of anonymous transit and commerce, like mall, airport, Starbucks, as Marco just said. So street art is driven by the aesthetics of material reappearance. They enable the piece of street art to reappear, even if it's not there anymore physically on digital screen, maintaining its capacity to have an impact on our cultural transformation. So street artists are masters of the semiotic of space. They are bricoleurs.
Sorry to interrupt. Could I ask you if you go to the conclusion, please?
Sure, I'm just concluding. Thank you so much. As the interview of the city as a visual environment and support to which they adapt collage assemblage of material resources, street art breaks the pattern of the city concept, focusing on marginalities and residues, and crosses it from below, romanticizing and reappropriating it. In this sense, the city becomes a digital syntagm, where the city is dematerializing itself, reproducing itself in a eternal way. So a peripheral space is eternalized in the discontinuous dichotomy. A city with physical but virtual results, which expands thanks to the use of technological choice. And these are the conclusion. From space to the experience in terms of accessibility, the perception of street art and the place considered inaccessible not available, not visible, out of significance, changed. From the database to the map, from the map to the interface, add to the topographically marked database, which is the presence of street artists also on social media. They mark topographically they work. So the remediation of technology affect nowadays always the perception of places, which becomes writable, changeable, advertising not only the material texture, but its meaning. In this sense, street art has a huge capacity to change meaning, even if not on the material real, but also on the digital one. Thank you. And sorry if I take too much time.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry instead to interrupt. I just wanted to say it was extremely interesting, your analysis of the impact of urban creativity on social media and vice versa, in terms of visibility of the artist and also to the connection with larger community. And the case, specifically the case of Reggiane, is one of the most, I think is one of the most important example of application of this approach in Italy, that highlight not just the artwork, but also the abandoned place without changing the nature of the two of them. So I really appreciate it. Thank you. And also I saw there is a question for you. I'm going to read it. So what are the criteria with which to decide to apply this hybridization to street art? Are there any necessary conditions that are not just degradation that, in your opinion, can help understand when to apply this approach?
I don't know if I just well understood the question. Well, the main criteria that we try to apply to this situation is the behavioral approach of street artists towards its content. So somehow we see here a double-edged sword. On one side, the street artist is working on pieces that are ephemeral. So they are not pretending these to be there forever. They use residual spaces. At the same time, they started to learn that, well, those pieces, if you focus on murals, if you focus on the fact that graffiti is used as a sort of also educative tools to engage youngsters, well, new generation to deal with their spaces, well, they started to see that there was more than the single performance of writing down something. There was another side, that was the side of express themselves. So this is at the roots of street art. So when Taki 183 was writing the tag on its name on the walls of New York, was screaming out loud his presence. I'm here. Listen to me. And I have something to say of the fact that the city itself is losing the meaning. So somehow the fact that the place is there and not there anymore is not somehow not more important than the reason why and the behavior that allow me to be somehow let's say interested on my own work. So social media in this sense enable street artists to get in touch not only with the performance that is over, is done, but the profound meaning of the reason why they do street art. So this is the criteria. So the behavioral hybrid crossing from real places where the piece is placed, and at the same time, the fact that they need to make them visible on digital platform is a sort of duplication of their signature, is a sort of duplication of the fact that they are real and they are aware and and I think it's worth it. So basically, we've seen, okay, this process of hybridization as a criteria itself. I hope I answered the question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. And maybe there's another comment for you. I'm going to read it from Mattia Ronconi. Interesting point of view. The first part of the presentation made me think about the horizontal rolling of pieces of train versus the vertical scrolling of images on social media. Interesting. Interesting as well. And so if you agree, I would like to go on with the next and the third presenter of today's session. So thank you again, Damiano Razzoli.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next presenter is Dominique Scalarone from University of Turin.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Thank you to the organizer for this invitation and especially for planning the sequence of the talk in such a way, because I think that my presentation will present a point of view of a conservation that is complementary and of course different, the other side of the medal, let's say, of what a speaker previous speaker has just given you. I also try to share my presentation.
In the meantime, I would like to present you reading some words of your bio, just for the other audience. So Dominique Scalarone is associate professor in the academic discipline chemistry for the environment and for cultural heritage at the University of Torino, Italy. And her research interests concern the characterization of artistic materials and the development of new materials and protocols for the conservation of cultural heritage. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. And so thank you again for letting me the opportunity to talk about the studies underway in Italy about conservation of street art. In general, I know that the topic of conserving street art is very complex and debated, and already according to what has been said right now by the other speakers, it's clear that there are many different points of view to consider conservation of street art. There are social, cultural aspects that have to be taken into consideration. There are, of course, ethical aspects that are very important. But I'm a chemist, and as a chemist, I will present you my point of view, that is the point of view of a scientist, and especially of a conservation scientist, in preventing, first of all, the materiality of street art works. And so it's a matter of fact that street art has gained in the past years a lot of success and the affection of people and communities. And certainly a lot of people and communities and administration as well, I would say, would like to have street art pieces, murals, for instance, always in a perfect state of conservation, because they enjoy to watch at them and to have them in their surroundings and environment. But unfortunately, we all know that this is not always the case, and this is because street art works. I will talk especially about murals, because my researches are focused on murals, are outdoors and are exposed to many severe environmental conditions, light, rains, pollution, and all these factors affect their constant state of conservation. This coloration, that is the example of this slide, is just an example, but there are other problems, conservation problems that murals can face. Vandalism is, for instance, a problem, and this is an example of how vandalism can be particularly hateful, especially when it is a carrier of, let's say, negative messages. This is a mural. I think that everyone in Italy knows the story about this mural, but maybe for people coming from Spain and other countries, it's just to give you an example of a mural that was realized very recently in Rome by an Italian street artist in order to celebrate the gold medal won by the Italian volleyball team in the Olympic Games in Paris. And the person in the mural is, let's say, the leader of the Italian team. As you can see from the image in the left, is a black player. And soon after the mural was realized, someone went and disfigured it with a pink spray paint, clearly trying to deliver a racist message. So this is an example, I think, a good example, I think, to let you understand or to let you think about the fact that under certain circumstances, even the idea of cleaning a mural is maybe acceptable. And personally, I think that in this case, especially exactly the meaning of a cleaning is much better than, for instance, just repainting the figure with its original colors. In fact, there are already several examples of murals and street artworks that are already under the official protection of national bodies. And probably this mural, Tutto Mondo, by Chiteren in Pisa, is one of the most known examples of mural that is currently under the safeguard of the Italian Ministry of Culture. There are actually several projects all over in the world and in Europe dealing with the many different aspects of street art, muralism, urban art. These series of meetings are an example of events related to this topic. I started to be engaged in the topic of conservation of street art in 2017 because I had the pleasure to coordinate this project that is probably one of the first European project about conservation of art in public spaces. It was a big project involving many partners and in 5 European countries. One of these countries was Spain also, and our Spanish partners were the University of Vigo and Montana Colors. It was a huge project considering different aspects of street art conservation, sociocultural aspects, aspects more related to science, knowledge of materials and durability of materials, and also touching educational aspects. I just want to take the occasion to present very, very briefly 3 resources that were developed during Campus project, and that's because they are available, so everyone can have access to these resources, navigating the website of the project. First one is a digital repository about the over 100 artworks that were studied during the project. So there one can find a lot of information about these pieces of art, including interviews to artists, scientific data, photographic documentation, and also a report, one for each artwork, a report about the conservation state of the artwork. Another resource was where the campus conservation guidelines that are available from the website, and then an e-learning platform for higher education institutions where people can find 2 online courses. One is for lecturers and the other is for students. Students in conservation and restoration of cultural heritage, but these courses are in fact open to everyone, so everyone can have access and explore them upon registration. In 2021, this project ended, but I had the chance to be part of another team and of another project dealing more or less with the same topic, that is Superstar project, where Superstar means sustainable preservation strategies for street art. This is a project funded by the Italian Ministry of Culture, and the main aim and goal of the project is to help and to provide some tool for the decision-making process in the conservation of street art. So to be of help when the point is to decide or define if a mural, let's say, should be conserved or not. And I stress this, under the point of its materiality. Then, of course, there are a lot of other different aspects that has to be taken into consideration. To give you an overview of the researches, I mean, not only me as a member of the University of Torino, but all the other members of the team are carrying out in the Superstar project. Well, there are 3 main activities. The first one is focused on the development and the use of new technologies in order to develop analytical protocol to increase the knowledge of materials that are used by artists to realize their work of street art, and especially their murals. Another part of the project is devoted to the development of innovative and green cleaning materials and methodologies. And the third part is about the development of protection procedures. What we are doing as a scientist is to test new methodologies and new materials, and to do that and to, to study their performances and to improve their performances if possible. We usually test and do our experiment in the lab and on site. In the lab, we need to prepare mock-ups that are model samples, like those you can see in this slide, that are intended to mimic the many different characteristics, in this case of murals, of the surface and also of the stratigraphy. So these are used for in laboratory test, but as I told you, a huge part of our research is also on site. As for the part concerning the implementation of analytical strategies for improving the knowledge of a material and of their degradation processes, we rely on a spectroscopic analysis that are that can be carried out in situ, are non-invasive, which means that there's no need to take samples and there's no impact basically on the object. We are very lucky because in our research we have the support of the MoLab infrastructure. Everyone, I think that most of the people involved in conservation science know that MoLab is an infrastructure, and it's basically a mobile laboratory that is, there are instrumentation and people that can move on demand and reach researchers everywhere in Europe, curators, museums, and do their experiment and find analytical researches. This is the first time that the MoLab infrastructure is working on the street. And also we are lucky because our researches are supported by the AirLab platform with the use of drones. This allows us to get very detailed information on the surfaces and materials used by artists to realize murals, and also to detect and to identify and to localize especially also degradation materials. That is very important in order to assess the conservation state. Sometimes it is necessary in order to get much more detailed information about the chemistry of these materials to take samples. So there are some partners in the team that are experts in microanalytical techniques that need samples, but these are very, very little samples. And it is possible through this kind of analysis to get very detailed information to find out which was the paint that was used by the artist, if this is not known, to discover the kind of product that was used, and also to get insight into additives, into pigments, to identify organic pigments, for instance, for chemist and conservation science dealing with this topic. This is a quite a challenging topic because artists and people also like paints with containing organic pigments because the color are very bright. but most of these pigments are quite unstable, so it is important to identify them and to study their behavior in order to understand degradation phenomena, for instance, discoloration, fading, and in general change of color. The second part of the project, as I told you, is about the development of new materials that can be used for cleaning surfaces of murals. Cleaning is intended to remove unwanted materials that can be soil or any kind of unwanted material. Then, of course, we can debate on how to decide what is unwanted and what is wanted. Anyway, sometimes it is necessary, and maybe the case of the mural of Paolo Egonu, the football player I showed you before, is an example where maybe everyone agrees that the vandalism act can be removed. The project is very careful and very focused on developing materials and procedures that are very sustainable under an environmental point of view. So there are partners in the project that are developing, for instance, green gels or green tissues that can be, or electrospan tissues that are tissues made with very, very thin fibers having a microstructure, having a porosity that allow to perfectly control the release of solvents that are used to remove substances. And the solvents we are looking for to create these cleaning systems are always green solvents. So we are looking to systems that are let's say green and sustainable under an environmental point of view. This is just to show you the kind of work that we perform in the lab, doing a lot of tests. The most challenging thing in this field of cleaning the surface of mural is exactly the case when the material that we want to remove is let's say, as in the case of a Paola Egonu mural, a paint spray that is the one used by the vandal, that is very similar probably to the painting material constituting the mural, the surface that we want to preserve. So this is just a view of the test, of the kind of test and of analytical assessment that we do in order to find out which is the best cleaning solution in order to remove, in this case, a blue paint, a blue unwanted layer from the original yellow paint that it is supposed to be preserved. Another strategy for cleaning that we are exploring is the laser technology. Lasers can be used, as you can see in the, in the video. Lasers can be used in order to effectively remove undesired material, undesired signs, or just dirt from the surface of murals quite fastly. But of course, it is important to research on this topic in order to identify which are the best conditions in order to have an effective cleaning without damaging the surface underneath that we want to preserve. And the third part of the project is about the development of protection procedures, that is, find out if it's possible to, let's say, prolong the life of murals using protective coatings. We have selected 6 coatings that are commercial products. We have selected them based on the feedback received by restorers and conservators, who are sometimes asked to intervene on murals. And we are testing these materials in the lab, doing artificial aging treatments in order to speed up degradation processes, and in order to understand if their performances can be maintained in the long term, or if their stability may cause problems, or they do not work well in time. So in order to assess the performances of these coatings, first of all, these are all coatings that are supposed to be perfectly transparent in order to not alter the aesthetic, to not change the aesthetic, the appearance of the mural or of the work of street art in general. In order to assess performances of these products, we look at the aesthetic compatibility of them once applied on a painted surface. We assess their protective behavior, their resistance against rain and light, and we test adhesion properties and their mechanical properties in time, if they are able to preserve their elasticity, or instead, if in time they become harder and more fragile, thus losing their efficacy as protective coating. And of course, we assess their chemical stability. And we are trying this way to not only to find out good products, to identify what is the best. That is important, of course, but it is not the point. We are much more interested in developing a procedure of testing that can be transferred to restorers, to public administration, in order to be able to manage the maintenance of these artworks more easily and in a more even sustainable way, economic sustainable way. And the same test that we are doing in the lab, we can do them even on site. And this is just to show you the mural in Turin, where we are testing the 6 coatings that have been selected for this project. I'm part of the University of Torino, but in the project there are a lot of other Italian universities involved, and several institutes of the National Research Council that I want to acknowledge being a part of the project. And also I want to thank the stakeholder of the project that support us in the different phases of our research since the beginning, but even now during our project activities. And of course, I want to thank the organization of this event for letting me the chance and the possibility to talk about this scientific point of view of dealing with the conservation of street art.
Thank you. Thanks to Professor Scalarone and her university project, which studies urban creativity and the other perspective, another stimulus for international experts concerning the possible post-work declination. So we have not 1, not 2, but 3 questions for you. So the first, by Damiano Razzioli. From the point of view of a restorer, what do you think will be the main driver to empower a stronger focus and urgency of restoration of the street art's contemporary fresco?
Well, I'm not a restorer, but it's not that I want to skip the question. Well, I think that the point is not, the point is not the restorer, in the sense that the restorer, I think, as a scientist, has to face a problem that is to, to do something under the point of view to intervene on the materiality of the object. So the decision whether to start a conservation intervention or plan a conservation intervention on a mural, on a fresco, I do not think it's something that depends on the restorer. It's something that depends, on a lot of other actors. So it's the topic of whether to decide to conserve or not. And this is depends more on, the role that the piece have for the community, the role that the mural or the work, street art work has for the history of the place. So I do not think that it's something that depends on the restorer or on chemists that help in the process.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to go further with the second question. I'm going to read it from the chat from Valentino. A more design-related than technical question. In the process of protecting street art, how is the community directly involved? Could making the street art intervention wholly the final part of a longer process, renovating spaces in a shared way to make places part of a strategy through the work of street artists, becoming a tourist attraction and through the training of the local community, exploring its new potential and creating tourist interest be useful path?
How people can be involved. I know that there are a lot of events and projects trying to involve people in not only in the creative process of murals, for instance, but even if more recently, also to inform people about the possibility of following and applying protective strategies for murals. In principle, I don't know, honestly, if this has already happened somewhere, but in principle, even people, could also could also become restorers under this point of view, meaning that if artists and the community agree on the fact that a mural can be protected with a coating, for instance, that do not affect the aesthetic of the mural. If this is accepted by the artist, and it's not such a strange, option, it may be. I think that it's a way to involve people in this topic of conservation. I don't know, honestly, if there's already been some event where people, member of the community of the place where the mural or the street artwork is placed, have been directly engaged in conservation. I know there are a lot of event where I engage in the creativity part of the story. But it's something that can be done. We have worked, especially in the campus publish, we worked a lot with artists. And what I can say is that at the beginning, my experience was that artists were not very open to the idea of conserving street art. But I can also say that allowing them to participate in the project and letting them to be involved and to be informed about what was going on in the project. Some of them, I would say a lot of them, changed their mind. Of course, it depends case by case. So I understand the point that someone before me arose about the ephemeral nature of street art works, and that's a point. But sometimes a lot of street artists are like the idea that it's possible to make their creation live longer. So the scenario is really very complex and differentiated. I think it's a case by case choice.
Thank you so much. There's another and last question that I will read briefly. So intervention aimed at conservation could have a significant cost. What are the evaluation criteria for choosing works to preserve? For example, works which have an effective social or economic value, etc.
Yeah, exactly. What I've shown you is that, under the point of view of the research in materials and chemistry and methodologies, what we are doing now is to try to transfer, to be able to define protocols and procedures that are sustainable even under an economic point of view, in order to give more possibilities to local administrations, for instance, to define maintenance plans for street art works. It is difficult to, of course, to decide which piece of art, of street art should be conserved or not, because already, of course, there are costs. I think that it's impossible. I'm sure that is utopic. Think that every piece of street art can be preserved, and maybe it has not a sense because quite often the intention of the artist is not that. But I think that there are situations where if the piece have a special significance for the people, for the history of the place, and for the value also under an artistic point of view, because honestly, there are different level of, and also under an artistic point of view, there are differences among the different pieces of street artworks or murals or graffiti or writings that we can see going around our street. There are already cases where the administration, local administration, have decided to intervene in order to save, to prolong life of murals. As far as I know, in Turin, for instance, I mean, I've shown you the case that is very famous of Tuttomondo in Pisa, but on another level, there's a mural we worked on in Turin that is a sort of a memorial of a tragedy happening that happened in Turin many years ago. Is the ThyssenKrupp tragedy. So it's a tragedy that occurred in a workplace. And as the old city is very as a memory, and that event was very dramatic. For instance, that mural was chosen by the municipality of Turin to be a case study in a campus project, and thanks to the involvement of students of the restoration and conservation course in Turin, there was a restoration intervention. So it is not impossible. I think that it is possible to find resources if there's a stronger motivation.
Thank you, Professor. There's another very last question that I'm gonna ask gently if it's possible to have also a brief response. In this case by Carla. How to prevent future damage to urban art after restoration?
Sorry, can you repeat, please?
Sure. How to prevent future damage to urban art after restoration?
Okay. Well, usually. Okay, it's not easy to answer briefly. Maybe it's easier if I give just an example. So dealing with, I was talking about a coating that can be of help in protecting the paint layers of a mural, for instance. One of the criteria for selecting this coating under a point of view of a restorer or conservation science is their removability, meaning that there are materials that can be, once applied, they can be removed easily. So if they have been damaged, they act like a sacrificial layer. If they have been damaged, they can be easily removed with the damage. And then, of course, it is expected the surface underneath has been preserved, and another treatment can be done again. Under the practical point of view, I mean, the principle of retreatability and reversibility of conservation treatments is one of the bases of conservation in general, not only for street art, but in general.
Thank you so much, really. And thank you also to other presenters, Italian, both Italian and international. And I will pass to Isabel for the final greet and the conclusion. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for the great presentations and for contributing with your questions to the dialogue. And just very briefly, remember that the presentations are going to become articles that are going to be published. So the knowledge is going to be available in the future. And next Wednesday, we are meeting at the same time with the same link for the 3 Spanish cases. So don't miss it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. See you next Wednesday.
See you. Have a nice evening, everybody.
Have a nice evening. Bye.